The following podcast contains explicit language. You're listening to the Cinematography Podcast presented by Hot Rod Cameras, a program about the art, craft, and philosophy of the moving image and the people who make it happen. Coming to you from the world headquarters of Hot Rod Cameras in Hollywood, California, are your hosts, Ben Rock and Ilya Friedman.
Hey there, Ben Rock.
Hey, Ilya, how's it going?
Going pretty well. It is time for another fine episode of the Cinematography Podcast. On the show today is Baz Irvine, DP of Silo Season 2. I'm very excited for this one. I had a fantastic conversation with him, which it went to a bunch of directions I didn't expect it to go, including brutalist architecture. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I just listened to your episode last week with the DP of Control Freak,
yeah.
And holy crap, what a great interview. That was really great. If you have not listened to Ben's interview from last week, you should totally go back and listen to it. And I started watching Control Freak based on your interview, which was great.
It's a really cool film. Yeah, I mean, it's really cool, and it's fun. It's fun to see how much you can soak out of a modest budget, shall we say, in a short schedule. I love all the dry for wet stuff that he did in that. There's so much of it.
I didn't even get that far, but I can't wait to go back to it. I'm going to go back to it today. I'm going to watch more of it. It's great. And your interview drove me in that direction.
And now, close focus.
So Ben, I'm trying to just blow through some stuff here because we got a lot to talk about. But it is another update going on with the ongoing tax incentives versus penalties for the U.S. sort of proposed by John Voight and now backed in some ways by Donald Trump. There was an article.
Donald Trump was basically proposing tariffs for foreign productions.
Yes, that's exactly right. Okay, so there was an article in Screen Daily all about the latest update on that. Ben, do you want to take us into what's going on?
Well, it was a bunch of different trade organizations and supposedly John Voight. The trade organizations listed in the Screen Daily article, and I hope that there were more. But it was it says representatives of nearly a dozen groups, including the Studio Lobbyist of the Motion Picture Association, the MPA, the Independent Film and Television Alliance, the PGA, the Producers Guild, SAG-AFTRA, the Writers Guild of America, and IATSE, the Film and TV Workers Union. I don't see on this list the Directors Guild, of which I am a member. I hope that I'm just secretly missing that. But what it is basically a letter to the president that starts with the typical genuflection that apparently is,
required.
The supplication, the embarrassment of oneself, and then it kind of goes into sort of a three-part ask. And it was Section 199, domestic manufacturing and production incentive, Section 181, expensing for American film and TV productions, and Section 461, carryback of net operating losses. And basically, it's what we were talking about last week. Not that either one of us are especially prophetic, because to me it's extremely obvious. That that you're not going to get domestic production back by taxing people who leave the country, but you're going to keep it here by giving tax incentives to people who stay here.
I think you're even going to get something else. I think you're going to get potentially people from other countries wanting to come to the U.S. then to take advantage of our rebates. So we will be actually not only doing what we set out to do, which is to try to keep, reshore and to keep American production here. But I think we might get some foreign countries wanting to come shoot in the U.S. to take advantage of our tax incentives, which would be great.
If we do this.
We do this. Yes. I think that there's a big if there, but it would be great. And imagine all of those extra new local jobs that would happen because we're enticing people from the UK and from Europe and from India and all other countries that are producing movies and television to come here and shoot in the U.S.
What would be better than Canadian TV shows being shot in America because it was cheaper to do it here?
I think almost nothing. That would be amazing. I think that, Canada might enjoy it as well.
They could use the break. They could use the clear traffic on the streets of Vancouver.
Yeah, I think that it is a look, it could be something wonderful for Trump's legacy. Trump's got a lot of, hateful, polarizing, corruption type of things to be his legacy right now. The people being torn from their families and deported. There's all kinds of stuff right now that could be the Trump legacy.
Getting bribed with a $500 million airplane.
Yeah. And frankly, we all know that he doesn't really seem to care about perception for any of this stuff. But I think that somewhere around there, he does seem to have some love for entertainment. And if he could be seen as the savior of the entertainment industry, something tells me he might want to try that. So I hope something happens. I hope that it's a positive.
As much antipathy, and that's a strong exaggeration, as much antipathy as I have for the man in my heart, I would definitely give him due credit if he spearheaded a program that brought more domestic production back. And I do believe it is within his power. But I also think that it's not tariffing. It's all tariff is all stick. And we've gone to stick without even trying carrot. And it's time that we, maybe make a national tax incentive. And, these three things I think are a really good start. And obviously, the people who are talking about it are all labor people. So they know what they're talking about way better than me.
It's interesting because he could also be seen as someone who is reaching across the aisle because, Gavin Newsom came out and said, right after tariffs, like, hey, what we really need after Trump announced the tariffs is what we really need is a $7.5 billion fund, an incentive. And then all these other people basically jumped on the bandwagon too. So Trump could actually be seen as like a unifier and be actually on this one issue is trying to do something that is, copacetic and, looking to be a uniter instead of a divider. And that's not a look that he's gone for very far so far. So
yeah, I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't see it either. So, but I think that the entertainment industry, if this does become his pet project, this could be something that is unlike the other stuff so far.
No, I mean, I think it would be great. And hopefully, at the very least, if John Voight indeed is part of this group of people talking about this, maybe maybe John Voight can get some kind of a summit and, get negotiations rolling to do this thing, which will bring domestic production back to the United States. And in my opinion is probably the only, what we want is more production and we want it in the United States. We don't want to make production harder to be done anywhere when producers are, basically, stretching a dollar as far as they can already. Now we're going to penalize them because they went to a place where they could make their movie or their TV show for the money that they were given. It's there's a lot of moving parts here, but yeah, hopefully this will at least get that conversation going in that direction. I look forward to us updating, hopefully not on a weekly basis, but getting some updates on this.
No, I think we'll try very hard not to actually continue to harp on this as we go forward now for our podcast, unless there is something actionable and real and substantial going forward, because Lord knows there could be a lot of just, prospecting and trying to figure out and read the tea leaves of what's happening. But we'll come back when there's something concrete and it really looks like one thing's happening one way or another. So Ben, I think that we should get to our interview with Baz Irvine.
The Cinematography Podcast Interview.
Joining me now is Baz Irvine, cinematographer for Silo Season 2. In fact, cinematographer for 40% of the episodes, the only person who's done more episodes than you for the entire series is Mark Patton. Hey, welcome to the show. Welcome to, I'm so excited to have you tell us about Silo Season 2.
Well, thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure. And it's very exciting to talk about Silo and anything else you might want to ask me.
All right. Well, hey, let's dive right into Silo. It's one of my favorite series of the last couple of years. Season 2 raises the stakes over season 1. It is beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful show, and I want to say that I think one of the things that I'm most impressed about, and one of the things that I particularly appreciate that you did in the show, is the lack of lighting. The lack of light, especially in episode 1, which is first of all, we get to go into a new silo. I believe it's Silo 17, if I understand my numbers correctly. So, and talk about motivated light sources. There's so few light sources, and there's this like soft ethereal glow that is, and sometimes motivated from what seem to be like decaying practicals built into the set or built into areas, or just sort of like, this general little bit of ambience that where it allows us to see just, above the edge of the absolute edge of darkness. Can you talk about, I'm hoping it was fun, but can you tell me like about the process of getting Silo 17, this decrepit, mostly uninhabited silo, to look this like edge of darkness everywhere? It's so cool.
Well, first of all, I wish I could be as eloquent as you, because you've nailed it right on the head. I think the biggest challenge for the new Silo 17 was, it was kind of full of contradictions, because at first it had to appear to be lifeless, but it wasn't. It felt like there was no power, no electricity, but there was, because we find out that somebody else is living there. And I think that it had to feel familiar but different. It had to definitely feel slightly terrifying. Rebecca was on this journey into hell, and so the look of it was obviously everything, and we talked at length about, we had different ideas. Initially when I read the script, it said very specifically the whole silo was in darkness. I was like,
what every DP wants to read.
Completely, and of course there was different types of darkness. Movie darkness is very different from, real darkness. And that was some, an avenue we did explore. But, once we got beyond once you establish the idea that it really does need something to there's no way I'm going to put Rebecca Ferguson through corridors and all sorts of stairwells and stuff without having some detail on her face, and also just from a practical level, how could we show off the beauty of not just a different silo, but culturally a different, a more artistic silo where murals and all sorts of frescoes and things we established those. Obviously, a lot of that was done with torches to find stuff in the darkness. But the idea that I hit on, which finally made it over the line, thankfully, was the idea that you've probably seen in the original silo, occasionally they'll show the shots of the amazing sort of lights at the top of the silo, and the kind of shutters come open and it the light sort of pours down into the silo, and that's what gives the silo the circadian rhythms of life, and et cetera, night and day. And I said, well, look, why not the same lights existed in this silo? So what if they're just on some sort of backup reserve power? They've become decayed over the years. They've become, algae and all sorts of moss and, vegetation's growing in front of them. So we thought, well, they could have a kind of greenish hue, which would sort of fit with the idea of a sort of an older lighting fixture that's kind of decayed beyond its working life. And we shot lots of tests, and we also realized it would really help if Rebecca just happened to grab a flashlight somewhere near the start of her journey as well. But that was okay, because that was a fairly, I don't think that was a stretch to do that. And I think also we established early on that one of the cameras in the upper cafeteria is still flickering to life. So there's some electricity. I think the whole point was, it was like, where it helped us, we could have the odd. My philosophy was, if there was still a bulb that would be working, it was still working, or it was flickering. But most of the fixtures had gone. I think that I wanted it obviously to feel as dark as possible. And I think that, I did try, and I'm so pleased you said it, because some days I was like, is it dark enough? And then some days it was like, oh God, I have just gone too far. This is the end of my career as I know it. This is my last job. And
you pulled it off so well. No, I mean, you really pulled it off. And I really love the flashlight gag, which of course gets used quite a bit in that first episode. It reminds me in moments of sort of like the Instagram videos you see of people who are exploring desolate places they're not supposed to be, who are trespassing, sort of walking around with a torch. You get a bit of that from Rebecca as she's passing through there, but it's augmented in such lovely ways of like very sort of like yellow decaying fluorescence and all sorts of other sort of flickers and little bits. It feels like, you know, she shouldn't be there, that there's danger around every turn for her. And sure enough, there is a giving nothing away now. If you haven't watched this, I'm sorry, but this is season 2, episode 1. You really got to see this. In her exploration, she has a fall, which it happens early on, and she disappears into darkness out of camera. And you think, oh my God, this is the end of her. But of course, she survives, and of course it doesn't. But it's like it's so wonderful to just have the references of the brutalist, concrete built, silo that kind of surrounds her all around, and not be able to see. It's so much, I think, more powerful for your imagination to not see all of the terror that is lurking, the rusted metal and tetanus that is around every single corner.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that shot you just described is actually that's one of my favorite shots in Ep 1, because when we conceived of the idea of Rebecca falling away from camera, the director Michael Dinner wanted to be really not to overly cover it with like lots of angles, and he just wanted to make it feel very simple. So we came up with the idea that we'd sort of follow her over the kind of precipice of the broken bridge and let her go into darkness. And that really happened. I mean, obviously we had a stunt double for some stuff, but she really did fall into darkness. And then the other conceit was that when you then pick up the shot from below, I was like, really, I love this idea that if we had a camera underwater, but the water had been undisturbed for years, I was kind of optically perfect. You would just think she's fallen to her death, and then boom, she hits. If I had my way, I'd have probably luxuriated in a bit of high speed falling. But the reality was that Michael, the director's instinct was right, that actually being quite brutal with the edit and just seeing her fall away and then picking it up from below and boom, she hits the water. That was the way to show it. It was more shocking. It was more visceral, and it was just simple. We tried not to although there was some incredible camera movement, most of Ep 1 is handheld. Most of it is with Rebecca, trying to never get ahead of her, so that we discovered it we discovered the silo with her. We went round corners, and that was very important too, because, I think in the other silo, you're always tempted to, because it's an incredible thing. Like, you walk into it and then you sort of have to get your head around the idea that this is vertical. This is not a horizontal situation. This is a vertical situation. Everything is down here and up there, but it doesn't actually exist because, most of that is VFX world. And I think that's the hardest single challenge as a cinematographer doing silo is what's above and below frame.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. All right, so I'm not going to ask you to go into all the gory detail, but for the people out there who are looking at this lighting and thinking like, I want to create something that is inspired by, because I really think that episode 1 in particular will be referenced by people. Well, what's your recipe? Is it large soft sources? Is it reflected light? What do you like to do to create this low ambience and occasional spots of specular interest and highlights throughout the frame? How do you go about it?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, it was top light. It was soft. What we did was we looked at testing. We had some big sort of balloons, like square balloons that we could float into the ceiling of the studio. It wasn't a very high studio for that main silo rotunda is actually in quite a limited space. So we had balloons for the original silo, and then I was like, well, what's the biggest textile we can get? And we got I think we got this like sort of 40 by maybe bigger 50 by 50 silk, and we tried a couple of different variations. And what I found was because what I realized with Rebecca was that I could underexpose her, but the light had to be beautiful and soft and kind of non-directional, and we did various tests. So we found that if we hung this huge textile under 2 of our balloons, that pretty much I could then sort of underexpose her 2 or 3 stops, and there was just this beautiful glow and enough light in the eyes. But what I also had to be kind of cognizant of was that the journey is ultimately to find the light source in the silo, the IT level, where eventually we find a solo, but and that also had to feel like a lighthouse in the darkness, a beacon of possible hope, and so I didn't want to. I didn't want to like clash with the look of that, and that had to feel warm and sort of welcoming, but ultimately that were a bit more complex than that. But yeah, I think the big soft source, and then the other thing that I did or I found, which was really exciting, which is I think it's a little bit more used now, but we were looking at various new lights that had come onto the market, because we're going back now to 2023, and we found this light from Germany called a pipe light, and it's like there was different sizes, but the one that I bought eventually, and then MBS bought some more, was like 8 foot by 4 foot. I think that with this pipe light, what I did was I put some muslin around it, like it was unbleached muslin wrapped around this pipe light, and it was, and we'd have it down to like 1%. It was ridiculous, or maybe like 2%, or maybe a bit more. But it in other words, we found that to supplement the overhead light, I could use this. And then, of course, further down the silo, when she's doing her journey through various corridors, as you said before, it's more about what you don't see as to what you see. And there's nothing more beautiful than a character walking with a flashlight, and the flashlight just bounces off whatever it is. If it's a grey wall, it's a grey wall. But in the flat or the apartment that she enters early on, she finds these incredible coloured murals. So you get all these incredible oranges and reds. So I think that, less is more. And once we establish that as a sort of approach, technical, philosophical approach, then that also became an easy approach for the other DOPs who came on board and did, a beautiful job to kind of run with.
Mm. Yeah, I think that it's a really lovely look. I know I've mentioned it several times here, and you talked about trying to capture everything about 2 stops, 3 stops under. What's sort of your working stop for something like that then? So are you you're lighting up to a certain level, even though it's very low level, and then you're underexposing. I assume that you're not being wide open and adding NDs. You're probably stopping down a little bit, trying to get a little depth of field. What's that like for you?
I think, I'll be honest with you. I'm just trying to think back. I actually think that we shot mostly at 800 ASA, which is kind of like the native ISO of the camera. And I actually think that the levels we were working with, I think I lit it so that I had 2 8.5, but knowing that I would usually put an ND3 in with some of the lenses to go as wide open as possible, much to my first AC's chagrin. I'm sure classic. But and I think that we had a lot that we made for the show, and my DIT was far cleverer than me, so built in a little bit of, security, that we had a bit more information than we needed. But that show lot was, went straight through the whole way through to eventually to Company 3 and our colorist, our amazing colorist Bill in Toronto, and it served us well. I don't try to overcomplicate things. I like to build one lot, and even with that, we tweaked it a little bit at the last minute. I think on my first shoot day in the original silo, I was like, oh my God, it was so much more contrasty than I thought. And I was like, right, okay, just relax. So we tweaked it. I'm a fan of slightly lower con images. I think that with that silo, we used a lot of atmosphere when we could, because I think atmosphere is brilliant because it allows you to low light levels, but it also, it kills the curse of sets. My whole thing was making season 2 more realistic. And I don't mean that season 1 wasn't. It was just that I wanted to feel like you were inside the silo, and that, you wouldn't show bits of it if you didn't have to. It's just like, it wasn't because, wow, let's look up because it's amazing. Like, it's not about that. It's about experiencing things with the characters. And that was another philosophical approach to my eps. And yeah, I think it worked well.
I think so too. I spoke with Mark Patton about season 1, for quite a long time, because I was so enamored with the series, and one of the things that he talked about, which I hadn't even really realized until actually he said it out loud, and then I absolutely paid attention to it for the rest of the series and for season 2, was the concept of like there is this light filtering sort of things there's more light at the top of the silo, and as you move further and further down deep, the darker and darker it gets. And I would not have said that season 1 was a particularly like high key, brightly lit show. But then when you get to see like Silo 17, you see really how much of a difference there really is and how much light we're talking about. One of the great things though about I would say the gradations that are going on, because you have these different populations of people who are living at these different levels, is all the different amounts of top lighting and how much the top lighting it seems to beautify and affect. And I will tell you that Tim Robbins in particular, for quite a bit of the show, almost seems to be walking around in his light. Like wherever he's at, he's got like some sort of glow about him. Can you talk a little bit about the concept of the different layers, the different stratas affecting sort of like general exposure or general ambiance, and if there are certain characters who maybe for one reason or another were always supposed to appear like, I feel like people of power have a tendency to be in more light in the show for some reason. And maybe, I don't know if it's just my own read on it or if that's something really intentional, but tell me about this level of strata and this characters, and how much does the lighting come into all of that?
Well, I think that, it's totally, that's true. The idea is, I was really influenced. I love J.G. Ballard's like High Rise, and then the idea of the elite at the top, and it's throughout all his literature. And I think in Silo, that it was very much a case of that. If you lived in the upper levels, you had an access to a better life. You had access to a better quality of light. I think Tim is closer to the light than any other actor, so you probably did feel that he had his own aura. But I think that we tried to make the light up top a little bit bluer, like a little bit cooler, and a little bit, definitely brighter. Brighter, the shadows were filled in more. I think we also just even like on a very on a practical level, all of the offices on those levels have more light in them. There's more lights in the ceiling. I mean, the production design was incredible. So there's these amazing kind of lozenge-shaped lights in a lot of the rooms. We had a lot of practicals to supplement them. So the ethos was that, very much on the upper levels, everything worked, which was another, contributory factor to the quality of the light. The corridors had more overhead fixtures. And then, of course, as you move down, and get eventually down to mechanical, it's like, it was a dream because, well, actually, two things I did, to keep it dark and mechanical. What we realized was if we started to do wet downs and spray the surfaces and the walls especially, you didn't need as much light. You just got little bits of reflective light. But we looked at some kind of a bit more color, very muted oranges and dirty oranges and rusty browns and greens, and played on the idea that also everything's manufactured in the silo. So you have to remember that, there's no wood in the silo. There's all these weird sort of little idiosyncrasies to the kind of internal logic of the silo. So, if you think about mechanical, well, they're the people keeping the silo burning or, but they're also building things and constructing things. So they would have, manufactured lights from, from pictures, from ideas. And so the fixtures below were more random, with a little bit more color. And the kind of mid-levels, it was a bit, I must admit, it's quite hard to sort of demarcate three different zones. So I think we just tried to push the middle a little bit in between. And I can't tell you how much the production design, subliminally makes you feel things are better lit, because the minute you have a crack in the wall next to a light further down, you're psychologically you're feeling already there's something a bit awry with the image. And so I think that it all goes hand in hand. It's never just about what I'm trying to do with the lighting, but I think also up top we tended to use more kind of sort of elegant crane moves, coming off one floor down to another, or looking down into mechanical and coming up with the camera. Usually moves that started in VFX and then were taken over by a real camera move on a crane or wire rig, whatever. But down below, the tendency was handheld, in and amongst the action. So yeah, I think Mark did an amazing job in season 1 of establishing those different looks. And, and it's also great when you've, the other thing is whenever I started, I don't think, season 1 hadn't been released. In fact, it was called Wool. It wasn't even called Silo at that point.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I had a massive amount of, learning
blueprint
from season 1. I mean, I had a blueprint and I'd seen the cuts and I talked to Mark, but Mark's great because he's very much like, this is your season. You just got to run with it. Here's some of the problems I had. Here's some of the things that were great. He's very sharing, lovely guy, but also I think we all believe, and I know that with season 3 that's just happened as well, I had a chat with the cinematographer who started that, and I was like, you just do your thing, because I think it's important that, especially with something with such a tight sort of location logic based theories around how things should work and not, it's important to bring your own vision and look. And I'm pretty sure he changed the lenses again, which I think is great. I think it shouldn't be homogenous. There should be tonally shifts. I think all that stuff's really important. But yeah, that was my philosophy.
Well, I think that's great. Let's talk about a little bit about those changes because season one had a very distinctive style. Season two, different lenses, same cameras though I believe.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what the thought process was in changing it up? I assume that the lenses stayed consistent though in season two. Episode to episode, it wasn't changing up like that. So tell us a little bit about those changes.
I think that with season one, it was anamorphic, but they actually shot 2-to-1 ratio, and I think things have evolved so much with the bigger streamers, and I think that there was still a little bit of reticence to maybe embracing a 2:3:9 ratio. So I think that for me, that ratio didn't completely show off the anamorphics, and also anamorphic lenses we associate so much with beautiful flares and the setting sun, all these things we couldn't have in the silo. And I was like thinking about that fact that it should have been 2:3:9, because even though it's a vertical space, actually I could see the original production designer, who did an incredible job, had actually designed all of the floors to work on a widescreen lens. I mean, it was in my mind, that was just totally unambiguous. That was what he'd set out to do. So I pushed for to change from 2:1 to 2:3:9 to 1, which worked. And then I completely threw a cat amongst the pigeons by going, however, we're not going to shoot anamorphic this season. I just felt that there was certain things I wanted. I think that what I worked out was the widest lens with the movie cam lenses gave me a slightly wider field of view. So I could be closer in the action. Minimum focus was going to be very important for my director and for me. And for me, there was something about the retro nature of those lenses. They're not like super retro, but they have a feel that just felt right for the kind of, you talked about the brutalist sort of, feeling of the show, that even though it's dystopian future, it feels very 70s and 60s in places, so that was just my approach. And, would I do it again? I don't know. I think the thing is with anamorphic lenses, you really have to, and also, on a purely practical level, we were going to double bank, or I think you guys call it crossboarding, where you are shooting 2 units all the time. Mm-hmm. And when you start doing that, you need to have access to 4 complete sets of lenses. So on a purely practical level, what was brilliant with that, Ari could supply us with like 5 sets of the movie cams. I did entertain the notions of certain anamorphics that would have been amazing, but I just knew that I wouldn't be able to get that many sets. So, there's many aesthetic choices that are made, but the life of a cinematographer is also, bogged down by the relentless nature of the practical considerations. And you just have to find a happy marriage between those two sort of conflicting notions.
I want to talk about episode 7. There's an underwater sequence that takes place in it. And tell me a little bit about the practical considerations of, anytime, cameras and water and lights and things get involved, it's a whole to do. And sometimes, specialty DPs and operators and people come in. Tell me about this experience for you, doing the underwater of episode 7.
Yeah. I mean, the underwater stuff was like, that was such a huge part of Silo season 2. And we had endless discussions about how we were going to do it. So and the thing about these types of big show is that you need testing time. You need to go down some rabbit holes that don't work out, because you've got to find the right approach. We did look at shooting dry for wet, And I think, to be honest, it might have worked for some of the sequences, but the problem is then it becomes really hard to combine things. I think we knew early on that Rebecca wanted to have her hair free, and trying to do hair replacement VFX if you're doing dry for wet is like almost impossible. You can never make it look believable. So I think sort of we then decided, okay, we're going to shoot this for real. And then we went to Pinewood. There's a famous underwater stage at Pinewood where, so many shows and films have been, have used. And we did a kind of process of testing with some of the ideas, some of the descent into the depths, and we just kind of explored how the shots could work, how the camera could move. But one thing that we learned very quickly was that it just wasn't big enough. I mean, it was deep enough, but it wasn't wide enough. So, and this is the other amazing thing about a big show is like, okay, then we'll build our own tank. And we literally built... I mean, this thing was incredible. Our SFX supervisor, he worked on this design, and I can't remember the exact dimensions, but I think we ended up building this round, steel tank that took months to construct, and but it gave us the scale to ultimately put one of the silo staircases in it towards the end. So basically, we worked that. If we built that in one of our studios, we could do so much of the stuff. And then we went to Pinewood and we shot actually all of the vertical descents. We shot horizontally because by turning the camera, it gives you a lot more thing. And it gives you a lot more kind of distance, like filming distance. But it also... And it worked with our specific scenes. But, I mean, if I hadn't had the testing and a brilliant underwater director of photography, Mark Silk, I would have been lost. You really have to, work through all of the, various problems. But then when we finally did build our set underwater at Oma Studios in North London, that was ours. It's not like we weren't under time pressure of being at Pinewood and, we had to be finished in one day. We were able to do this incredible journey and, make this terrifying world where she's literally once again, just with a flashlight, going through all these rooms. I mean, I did help myself a little bit with the odd hidden light fixture. Invisible fixture, but yeah, the underwater stuff was incredible, and it really, I felt so lucky to be able to establish a new silo and the whole look of that, and then to just get the chance to just sort of build the biggest paddling pool in the world to just sink our set into. It was incredible.
Yeah, it's such a nail biting sequence too. There's so much stuff going on, and by the time she's out, there's this like collective sort of like exhale, because even though she's out, the problems are still continuing. It's just going on and on. It's a really fantastic sequence for the series, and it feels like a mini climax before we even get to the final of season 2. So, we've talked about a lot involving the show so far, but I know that you don't just do silo. You're a journeyman. You're a member of the BSC, the ISC. I saw that you've done some work with a friend of the show, a friend of mine, Seamus McGarvey, which I thought was really cool. Tell us a little bit about your journey here. How did you get from wherever you come from to this point today? Go. No pressure.
God.
But yeah, condense the last 25 years into tell me your story. I mean, frankly, we never met before this. I know a lot of people in this industry, but this is great. I'm getting to make a new friend, and tell me how you got here.
I grew up in Belfast in Northern Ireland, where there is now a very healthy film industry, partly famously because of Game of Thrones. But when I was growing up there, it was the Troubles, and it wasn't, it was an incredible place. I love it. But I also wanted to get away. I felt, that I needed to move. My early love was music. My dad, I grew up partly in America because my dad lived on the East Coast. So I had these strange summers where I'd come on to the US and go on tour with my dad. Or like, he was a tour manager. He started off as a musician, became a tour manager. So I would do these like crazy summer tours with like Talking Heads, Eurythmics, so my growing up was...
I'm jealous. You named two of my favorites. That's great.
Well, there you go. It was like a kind of nomadic adventure. I was the kid in Almost Famous. But I kind of always knew that film was really sort of my first love. So, I mean, look, to kind of be a bit more concise, I got on a great scheme in London that was run by... Lord Putnam, David Putnam, who produced Chariots of Fire and stuff. He was very conscious of the fact that the industry in UK was very nepotistic, very white, very, closed doors. So he wanted to get people from outside of the London experience into the industry. I did that. I think the biggest thing that happened to me early on was I met Barry Ackroyd, the brilliant cinematographer of Ken Loach and Paul Greengrass, and as just, incredibly influential to all of us. And
sounds like right place, right time.
Yeah, he took me under his wing, and basically, it wasn't just drama. I went as his assistant, and we went all over the world doing these bonkers documentaries about, oh my God, like a witch doctor in Swaziland, and the history of explosives, which took us all over the world. But such an incredible learning thing. And then the work that I ended up working with on some of the Ken Loach films, as started off as a trainee and then became a first AC. So that was a massively seminal introduction to a certain type of filmmaking, a very honest, true filmmaking that's never left me. But then, I got to meet Seamus, and we became great friends and still are, and, worked on other things, and very quickly just, wanted to become a DOP myself. And I think that, when you come up through the ranks, you are lucky. You do experience different things, and I eventually, I started out doing commercials and music videos, and I think initially when I started shooting, my first drama breaks were, one of the biggest ones was classically a working title film called Mr. Bean's Holiday, which was probably...
That's awesome. I love Mr. Bean.
Yes, I know, exactly. And you know what? I'd looking back at it was such an incredible experience. I was, relatively inexperienced. But I got this chance to do this beautiful homage to filmmaking, and through nearly a year of my life through France and Provence, and incredible. But what happened to me was I got typecast as like comedy DOP. So it's just what happens in the industry. I got offered a lot of other comedy films, and it wasn't like I was being snooty, but I just didn't want to do that. So I ended up back in commercials for years. And I think it's only really in the last decade where I kind of went, okay, I'm not really made for this world of commercials. I need to get back into what my first love was. So I think my journey of probably the last decade sort of represents, and of course the new demographic being, there is now, way more TV work than there was then. Beautiful, incredible scripts, creative challenges in TV that never existed before. And I've just been really lucky that I've been, coming, in my mind, doing my best work at a time when we have got such great productions in the UK. As you know,
yes, a lot of them have left Los Angeles.
I did feel I was over for the ASC Awards recently, and it was brilliant, amazing weekend. Got to meet so many of my heroes and also friends and colleagues, and I did, I did have a sort of slight sort of low-level guilt that I'm kind of coming to LA for an award nomination for a what's conceived as a US show that shoots in the UK. But
you know what though, that is the international nature of production at the moment.
Yeah.
So, and congratulations on the nomination.
Thank you.
Really,
thank you. That was it was vindication for those long hours in the silo where I was slightly losing my mind and questioning everything. I did win it. Okay, I want to think we call it a WAFTA, which is a Welsh BAFTA for a factual documentary I shot a few years ago. But yeah, no, the ASC nomination. Do you know what? Do you know what was really special? Is like obviously I've got huge admiration for the ASC and stuff, but what made that nomination so special was that it's mostly people who I don't know who are voting for my work, which means it's about the work and it's not about my peers in the UK or whatever. And I'm not saying it's, biased. I'm just saying that in this respect, I just was like, okay, I feel like people are actually looking at something I've shot, and even now I sort of like slightly choke up when I think about it, but that just meant everything to me. It was very special.
It's really good work, and I'm really glad that you got that recognition. And look, I know you're not just doing Silo season 2, Mobland. Do I understand correctly that you also worked? I think there were several DPs, but tell me a little bit about Mobland.
It was just before Christmas. I got a call. And really out of the blue, things have been a bit quiet in the industry. Back in the autumn, and it was Mobland, or it wasn't called Mobland then. I think it was something else, The Fixer. It was a great opportunity to get something very different from Silo, contemporary, London based, which was exciting for me. I know London well. I've lived here for years. I love shooting in London. I love having ideas about locations. I love the topography. I love, the underworld, the whatever. These scripts had all of that, plus some really beautiful sets at Elstree, which was, so I came on for a later block, which Guy Ritchie had set up the show with Stefan Persson, who's a brilliant DOP based in London, who. It's great. For me, the people who were in it was the special thing. It was Pierce Brosnan and Helen Mirren and Paddy Considine and Tom Hardy. It felt, it's really special when you're in a room with those people.
It's an incredible cast. Oh yeah, for sure.
So it was an interesting project. I'm so pleased it's done. I think the viewing figures have been really, really quite exceptional. It's got a lot of buzz. It got a lot. And crazily, because it really was right down to the wire. I was only grading. Oh my gosh, I think I was only grading like ep 8 like last week, but it's like on TV in 2 weeks. The kind of this is the modern way. Run it right down to the wire.
And I don't know this. We haven't talked about it, but Silo season 3 I know is out there. Is there any chance of you coming back to do more?
Do you know what? I'll be honest with you. Silo season 2 was an incredible experience. However, I started that show at the end of 22, and I was still on it in April of 24. So it was a
2 years.
Huge commitment over a year. And that's very unusual for a DOP to be so involved for such a long period. And it is so subterranean and so, it's so specific that I think that when I finished, and I know season 3 came up in the summer as a possibility, I felt like I needed to hand the baton on to somebody else. I just felt that the show needs fresh blood and fresh ideas. And I don't know, as a cinematographer, would I have brought something more to the next season, because I would have been so influenced by everything that I'd done in season 2. So you never say never. And like, obviously, I don't know how many seasons it's going to run for, but I think I just wanted a change. And it's just, it's natural. I think that I generally feel like when I've shot something, I want to move on and try something else. I like, variety's the spice of life. I think different styles, genres, that's what really appeals to me, not to get too caught in, one particular direction, and kind of come at each project with a really kind of, clean mind, and really try to work out what lenses, I try not to have lenses that I always go back to, or cameras. I try to go, right, what does this need? And let's have fun and just start again. I think that's what makes cinematography exciting for me.
I'm really interested to see what you do next. I usually ask people on the show if there's a place that they can find them, that if they're on social media. I know because I follow both of your Instagram accounts. You're actually like, you're a DOP who actually does some Instagram. And it also seems like sometimes you do a little bit of what I'm doing here for like the British cinematographer. I see you like occasionally like interviewing like Lowell Crawley, like you're out doing stuff. So anyone who would like to follow you, please plug your accounts. We'll put them in our show notes at Cam Noir, but where can people find you on Instagram?
I think it's just baz.irvine.dop. But you're right. I have another Instagram site where I bought myself a lovely Hasselblad X2D camera, and although it's been a bit erratic, I'm trying to post just some pictures from that camera as a little kind of sideline. And
Baz, this has been such a great conversation. I think this is a really great place for us to leave it. Thank you very much for being on the show. Thank you for telling us about your work. I'm really looking forward to having you back on in the future and talking some more.
Yes, and thank you for having me. It's been an incredible chat.
All right, so that was Baz Irvine. What a fantastic conversation, Baz. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you next time you've got a project that we can discuss on the podcast. Hey, Ben, guess what? It is bill paying time.
Yay.
And we got to thank our fine friends over at Venus Lenses, also known as Laowa. Laowa, makers of all kinds of incredible lenses used by all levels of the motion picture industry. They have something new, something that is really impressive, which are some 0D shift cine lenses. So you're familiar with tilt shift lenses, right?
Very much, yeah. They were all the rage in the mid-90s.
Those sort of tilt shift lenses were very specific for effects, for music videos and different types of things where they were swinging. Like tilt shift lenses for still photography generally used more like architecture. And there has been some lenses
to like control what's in focus. Like basically, if there's a solid line, you can throw anything on one side in and out of focus.
Correct. But a shift lens, which generally used for still photography, just only shifts in one axis. So you can do that shift with these new Laowa cine lenses. So mostly used for architecture, not typically used in motion picture, but have been in the past. But these new ones are $2,000, $1,999.
What?
Yes. And they're also quite compact. They're not very fast. They're about, there's 20 millimeters of 4.1. The 15 millimeter is a 4.8, but they have zero distortion. Like zero distortion. These are very wide and they cover large format. They cover medium format. They cover the Alexa 65. They cover the Fuji GFX 102. These will cover medium format. And to do that with a tilt shift with cine sort of housing and gears and everything else, I think opens up a lot of really cool possibilities for filmmakers, for cinematographers who are looking to do something that typically it's been very rare. It's been hard to do. So if you want to make like a hotel, like instead of looking tilt it on its angle to make it look completely square, which is a very, very, popular sort of like opening to like movies and whatnot. There's like a tilt down and you see this towering building in front of you. They could make that rectilinear. They could make it totally flat, which is a super cool thing. It's got 11 millimeters of shift, and it also close focuses down to like a foot. These are pretty incredible. This is like near macro sort of capabilities. So to have this inside of these cool new and relatively inexpensive peel mounted shift cine lenses is something that is definitely worth taking a look at.
Excellent. I love Laowa lenses. I know that we've talked about this before, but like they were kind of back to back with your booth at NAB, and I spent a great deal of time looking at all their stuff. Pretty amazing stuff.
There's some cool stuff on the lawacine.com website. We will put a link to the products over at Hot Red Cameras, over at the show notes at Cam Noir, and definitely take a look. If you are interested in checking out the Laowa Shift Cine lenses, come to Hot Red Cameras and give them a look. Watch some of the videos online. Really impressive, distinct look, things that you just can't do with any other lens, which is great.
And now, short ends.
Cool.
All right, Ben, it is our short end time of the show. Do you have a pet obsession, a thing that you are, cooking in the back of your brain right now? What's going on?
I fell down a bit of a rabbit hole this week about a news item that caught my eye, and I think it was on CBS or something, but it just showed up in my YouTube feed. You know how you can buy abandoned storage lockers?
Mm-hmm.
So somebody did that. In this one locker in the Bay Area, in San Francisco area, and they found in it 2,042 unprocessed rolls of 35 millimeter still film.
Wow.
And nobody knows who the photographer was. We don't have any evidence of it. So they went and got a bunch of them processed. And not only are the pictures amazing just aesthetically, but they are of like major historical things like Muhammad Ali, like a Nazi rally, and they're all from like 1966 to 1970-ish. The Grateful Dead. There's a picture of Timothy Leary that he looks quite dashing. I never would have described Timothy Leary as looking dashing. There's like a lot of photographs of protests and weird ass hippies with their faces painted and rallies and police actions, and nobody knows who the photographer is.
Oh,
and
wow.
there's a bunch of still unprocessed photos from this stash, and those were in Kodachrome, and so they I guess
hard to process these days.
That's the thing, and I think it's like hundreds of rolls of Kodachrome that are unprocessed, and these photographs for the most part look like they could have been taken yesterday. They look amazing. There's like pictures of Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead and all this stuff, like all this San Francisco counterculture stuff. There's like just a great picture of like a school bus painted with all whacked out acid trippy psychedelic colors. It's crazy. So the guy who's doing this, his name is Bill Delzell. I guess he acquired the lot of the unprocessed pictures and is having them processed. And like, he's trying to get to the bottom of the mystery. And the closest he's gotten is there's one picture where we're looking into a window and you can sort of see the shape of a photographer, of like, you can sort of see the silhouette a little bit of the person taking the picture. He thinks it's a woman, but I'm looking, I mean, he's got the picture, so maybe he knows better than me, but I'm looking at it and I'm like, I don't know, everyone had long hair. And like, it's really hard to call it out. It's just a wonderful mystery. And I found a good article about it in the San Francisco Standard. I guess we can link to it. By Sam Mondros. But I saw it on CBS, and it's like the pictures are just amazing. I encourage anyone to just look this up and look at these pictures. And I love it because it's a real life mystery, and it's like, it would be great to figure out who this person was. This wasn't somebody who was just some rando. This is someone who could get close to Muhammad Ali and the Grateful Dead, et cetera, et cetera. This was somebody who had to have been of note at the time enough to even get that close to any of these people.
Damn, that sounds awesome. Yeah, I'll totally check that out. If you have a link to the story, we will put it at camnoir.com and I will get into it.
I'll post it in our Zoom chat right now. So, Ilya, what is your pet obsession of the week?
Oh, you're going to appreciate this one. I think that you will like this one a lot. I went and saw Sinners in the theater.
It's great, right?
It is great. It is. Can
I admit something?
So good. Yeah.
As of now, I've seen it 5 times in the theater.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
When was the last time you saw a movie 5 times in the theater?
When I was a projectionist, probably.
Wow. No, but it's really good. It is really good. And you had told me a little bit of stuff without giving me spoilers.
Yeah, I never like to overhype anything, even if I love it, because I don't accept the substance, which I definitely overhype to everyone who would listen to me. But I don't want to overhype it because it's like, it's still just a movie. It's a movie. It's not you're not gonna see through time when it's over. It's a movie.
No, but it was great to have such a fun experience in the theater. It was great to have such a great ride. And I heard it's coming back to IMAX this week too. So like
I knew it would. I mean, it was like when it went out of IMAX, a few people I know were like, oh man, I was hoping to see it in IMAX. I'm like, it's gonna be back.
The chance this week. Yeah.
This week. The second a movie is not like super performing, I'm not going to trash any movies, but as soon as whatever they're pushing for IMAX starts to not hold the audience, they know that they can pack them in with Sinners, because I haven't seen it in IMAX, I should admit, but it looks so good. It was shot in IMAX, and they used like a new IMAX camera that enabled them to do a lot of sync sound. That I guess is something Christopher Nolan had been kind of working on, and he's thanked in the credits.
Autumn Durald Arkapaw, friend of the show, but on the show, she shot it. She did an incredible job. Ryan Coogler, holy crap. I mean, this might be my favorite Ryan Coogler movie. It's probably your favorite Ryan Coogler movie.
Oh, for sure. I mean, because all the rest of them didn't have vampires in them.
And what a fun ride. Like the soundtrack is great. The cameo
I've been
by
listening
Buddy
to
Guy.
the soundtrack. I'm just like listening to the soundtrack while I'm driving around. It's such a good soundtrack.
I'm really blown away by this movie. Man, I hope someday we get to talk to Autumn and Ryan about this movie, but it's like, damn, what a fantastic evening at the theater. Even though it was late at night and I hadn't slept much the day before, I did not fall asleep during this movie. I was, like rapt attention, and I looked around a couple times during the movie when I thought I had a chance to breathe to see if I was going to see anyone on their phone. No, this movie grabs your attention from the beginning and holds it through the entire thing, and I think it spins up thoughts in your head about all kinds of stuff, and that's what I really appreciate. I appreciate fiction and horror that's making you think and making you think about the world and making you go on this fun ride. It was really a tremendous achievement, and kudos to I really hope that it's early in the year. I really hope that when Academy Awards come around, people are still thinking about Sinners.
I think they will, because I think it's like the movie that so far that's come out. It's an original piece of IP. Yeah, it's freaking great. It's so well written, and I was definitely in as soon as I heard Ryan Coogler vampires. I was totally in, but but like I wasn't expecting it to be such an emotional ride in such a great way, and it pays homage to horror movies like The Thing and The Shining, and
there's even a jump scare or two. It's lovely. Yeah,
but it also it has a bad guy. The Remick character, played by Jack O'Connell, is like a lovely, wonderful, amazing character who isn't just there to be evil. I don't want to ruin it. I only have one major note, and this is a public service to anyone who goes to see it, which is the credits roll, and then there's another scene.
Oh God. Yeah. I saw half the audience leave.
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
All 5 times I saw it, a bunch of people got up and left, and there's like a whole, and it's because they let the credits kind of look like they were really rolling.
Yeah.
And
that's true.
It's like a minute or so. And
they give a couple of flashes of like, oh, maybe you should stick around. You'll see something. But yeah, it's true. It does. You're right.
And it's like, it's an important scene.
And it's a great coda. Holy crap. I want to tell no one anything about that coda, but it's fucking great. It's really good.
All I'll say is just stay through the credits. Stay through the credits. To the very end of the credits, because there's a thing at the very, very end of the credits. It's still even pretty cool.
Once in your life, watch the damn credits. Just watch the credits for this movie.
Yeah, no, it's really great. And I feel like on my bingo card, I'm already saying like Delroy Lindo is going to get nominated for Best Supporting.
I've loved Delroy Lindo probably since Get Shorty. Get Shorty was the first time I was like, who is that guy? And then it was like I saw Delroy Lindo in so many tons of things. But yeah, he's fucking great. He's really good.
He's great. But I think Michael B. Jordan might get
Michael B. Jordan is great too. Yeah, God. Oh God, why am I blanking on her name right now? Haley Steinfeld. I think it's the best thing I've ever seen Haley Steinfeld in. Maybe it's.
I'm still a big fan of True Grit, but yeah, I mean, like,
True Grit's good.
I think, yeah, I mean, there's not a bad performance. The music's great. You know, if you're listening to this and you haven't seen the movie, but you've got like Spotify or Apple Music, just go listen to the soundtrack and tell me you don't want to see a movie that has all that music in it. The music is really great. I mean, I would compare it almost to Oh Brother, Where Art Thou in terms of great.
I thought about that 2 or 3 times while I was watching it. I was like, holy crap. It is a successor to sort of the soundtrack of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou. I didn't know that I needed or wanted, and now I'm so glad.
And it made me go like, you know, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? It needed vampires.
I actually really love Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, but this movie is incredible. This is
it's not a race. You can like them both, but
I can like them both. Yeah,
but I really do think Sinners is the best movie so far of the year. It's definitely. I mean, I've gone to see movies multiple times in the theater. I saw Longlegs, I think, twice. Yeah. But having a Regal pass makes it real easy to do that. But yeah, I mean, this is next level work from Ryan Coogler. I hope, everyone was like predicting it to be the end of the studio system when it came out because of his deal. And I'm like, bullshit. No. But also, I think it's what the studio needs more than anything is the shot in the ass of really well done, creative new IP that isn't a freaking, no offense to comic books, love a good comic book movie or a reboot or an adaptation. We can all go through a litany of great work that's been done in that world, but it's so good to see something that's just fresh and different.
And, there was a lot of people predicting doom and gloom for actually the box office of this movie and then saying like, well, even if it makes this much money, it's not going to make its money back. It just passed 200 million.
Can I just say that's just straight up racism? I hate to say it because was anyone saying that about Quentin Tarantino and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which was a comparably budgeted movie? It's like, come on. Everything doesn't have to blow the doors off, but this is blowing the doors off.
It is. And I think it's going to continue for quite a while. And I think people are going to keep talking about it because let me tell you, I think I've told at least 3 people to go see it now since I saw it. And that's what the industry needs. The industry needs really good word of mouth. It needs people saying like, you got to go see this. Like you should go see it on the big screen, have that experience. It's fantastic. So.
It needs original voices. And, not to get on my soapbox, but it's like...
Get on your soapbox. Hop up on up there, Ben.
Ryan Coogler made an amazing film, his first film, Fruitvale Station, shot by the amazing Rachel Morrison. And it was great. And then he made Creed, which is IP. And then he made Black Panther, which is IP. And then he made the sequel to Black Panther, which is IP. And it's like, you see like this amazing young talent in Fruitvale Station get sucked into the IP machine. And I'm so happy to see him leave it. And I hope I'm not saying, like, if somebody said, hey, Ryan Coogler is going to make a Star Wars movie, some part of me would be like, oh, cool. But also, if I heard Ryan Coogler is going to make another original movie, I would be much more happy about that. And, it's like what we don't seem to have right now in the abundance that we used to have them are directors like Stanley Kubrick or I don't know. I mean, you can go right down Martin Scorsese, people who just made original films mostly. I guess Kubrick's a bad example because so many of the things he made were adaptations, but you get my point though. Somebody who's like their name is the brand, and there's been like a mission creep so that the IP is the brand, and I like it that this movie was so good that Ryan Coogler now he's got a free pass. His next thing, whatever he does, hopefully it's another original story, and hopefully he does this again. I mean, that's a big ask. It's hard to ask someone to just go be a genius all the time, but I mean, he really did a great job.
There's been I think there's been some really good stuff out there that doesn't get a lot of attention. One thing about Ryan Coogler is when he does do something, it gets a lot of attention. So I think the stakes were really high for him too, and he totally knocks it out of the park. He's assembled a great team. He put together an incredible cast, and wow, it's just like. It was so worth it. So worth it. Anyway,
did you see the video, by the way? I posted it on Facebook weeks ago, but it's Ryan Coogler walking through all the various formats you can see this movie in and what they mean and how he did them.
No, I didn't see that, but now I have to go. Now there's something else I have to watch. Thank you, Ben. I've got so many things on my to-watch list right now, but
sorry,
I will have to get to that. Okay, so Ben, that about does it for this episode. Where can people find you if they want to track you down?
You can please find me at, please and thank you, find me at benrock.com, just the way it sounds. You can also hit me up on any of the social media sites. I'm even on TikTok. I just don't really use it. But certainly LinkedIn, Facebook, Blue Sky, that kind of stuff, Threads. How about yourself, Ilya? Where can people find you?
This week, you can find me over at the J.L. Fisher Barbecue, which is happening on Saturday and requires an RSVP. But if you don't go to that, you can also find me over at Hot Rod Cameras Saturday, May 17th. We are having a tabletop cinematography event going on over there with Timur Savan, and it's also sponsored by Sony and Emotimo. And so if you are in Los Angeles on Saturday the 17th and want to meet up with me, I'll be at both those places. And then I will also be traveling to Korea for the Koba show, which is going to be on May 20th. I'll be there for a few days. So if you are in Korea and you want to meet up, what
is the Koba show?
Koba is like the NAB of Korea. So it's gets about 45,000 people. NAB by comparison is like 55,000 people. So it's similar in size, and I've never been before, but I'm going there to promote and support the new Betty reflectors, which unfortunately I'm not using at this exact moment, but I will be again shortly for this podcast. And then I'm taking meetings with people and possibly doing an event. So if you are in Korea and you want to meet up, otherwise, if you are not around for either Los Angeles or Korea, make sure you hit me up on LinkedIn or at hotrodcameras.com. Hey, Ben, we have to thank some people who made this show possible.
Well, as always, our kick-ass producer, Alana Cody, setting everything up and knocking everything down. We've got some pretty cool stuff coming up. She had me do an interview last week that I can't wait to share with you for a TV show that I love.
Nice. I'm looking forward to it.
It's pretty brutal stuff. Anyway, we got to thank her. We got to thank Charlie Nix, our kick-ass editor, who hopefully makes us sound like less of a bunch of doofuses than we really are. And last but not least, we got to thank Kays Alatrakshi, who composed all the music for the series. Check him out at musicbykays.com. Hire him to, record a soundtrack for your next movie or whatever. He's great.
He is great. All right, Ben, you want to take us out?
Thanks for tuning in.
This has been the Cinematography Podcast, presented by Hot Rod Cameras. Find your next camera, lens, or accessory on the web at hotrodcameras.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our show on iTunes and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks for listening.